Of the many horror subgenres, psychological horror is known for leaving a lasting impression because it plays on the fragility of the human mind. Psychological horror doesn't usually need jump scares or heavy gore, instead it manipulates us in ways that may seem a little sadistic. Isolation, instability, and paranoia are all used to incite an internal crisis that makes you want to stop, but at the same time compels you to go on. The best psychological horror games are those that exploit the common human fears of helplessness and loss of control. Zombie games can be horrifying in their own right, but the hero is usually heavily armed and level-headed, creating a feeling of semi-empowerment against the horde. The games on this list, however, are psychologically terrifying because their characters are weak in the face of enemies. I'm Daryl for Cultured Vultures, and these are the spookiest psychological horror games ever. Slap like, and you will always be in our minds. Aww. 10. Doki Doki Literature Club. From the perspective of someone whose sole experience with the visual novel genre was Dream Daddy, Doki Doki Literature Club is captivatingly strange on so many levels. It's not unreasonable to wonder if the psychological horror game might have been a bit mislabeled as you booted up to hear gentle, upbeat music and read from a baby pink polka dot textbook. In Doki Doki, you play as a boy student who is basically coerced by his neighbour into joining an all-girls after-school literature club. At first, the 4 girls are alluring and the club is inspiring, but then things start to feel more chaotic in almost every way possible. Doki Doki is full of surprises, and you don't have to be super familiar with visual novels to appreciate this genre-bending, fourth-wall-breaking good time. Oh, and the game is available for free. That's a pretty good deal, you guys. 9. Fran Bow. Fran Bow is a 2D adventure game that boasts a storybook art style, heavy symbolism, and a whole lot of macabre imagery. After witnessing her parents' gruesome deaths, the titular character is committed to a mental institution which she escaped by slipping into a drug-induced fantasy world. Fran Bow is highly reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland, or maybe more so Pan's Labyrinth, as she uses this fantasy world to escape from her harsh reality. Like many of the best psychological horror games, it plays with themes of sanity and delusion to show you that enough traumatic experiences can actually loosen a person's grip on reality. Fran Bow's ending is so open to interpretation that just thinking through all the possibilities is as distressing as it is haunting. 8. Layers of Fear. Nothing says psychological horror like a tortured artist with a mysteriously dark past living all alone in a mansion. In Layers of Fear, your objective is to finish your masterpiece painting at all costs, but something deep in your psyche is haunting you. With each layer of paint applied to the canvas, the game slowly reveals more of the tragedy that befell the artist's family. Layers of Fear is as hallucinatory as it is scary, like a psychedelic horror experience inspired by a bad trip. The moments where you lose sense of the environment around you, unable to distinguish illusion from reality, are what makes Layers of Fear one of the best psychological horror games out there. 7. Omori. Omori is video game genre bending at its finest. With inspiration from Earthbound and Yumi Nikki, Omori resembles many turn-based RPGs where the titular character goes on adventures and battles enemies with his friends. But it soon becomes clear that this fun daytime dream is actually a facade, concealing some serious trauma. As Omori strikes a careful balance between light and dark, you may find yourself unable to stop playing because you're so nervous about what might happen next to the group of friends. Omori's realistic and compelling portrayal of common phobias is what makes it easily one of the best psychological horror games. 6. Limbo. Puzzle platformer Limbo is terrifying from the very start because you really don't know where you are or how you got there. Only one thing is certain: everything wants to kill you. Without music or colour, Limbo is minimalist in a way that somehow feels both empty and claustrophobic. The white noise from the forest and factory is actually deafening at times, suffocating the player with a cruel atmosphere. Limbo is a disturbingly gorgeous game that has been compared to German expressionism or film noir. The boy character is always killed by a single hit, and his death scenes are pretty vivid even in black and white 2D. The many different ways he can meet an untimely end are paired with just enough gore to make you want to play more carefully with him. 5. Outlast. It's almost as common to see investigative journalists as horror protagonists as it is to see blade-wielding murderers as horror villains. Everyone knows those crazy journalists will do anything for a story, even if it means trespassing in a remote, insane asylum after hours armed with only a camcorder. The true terror of Outlast comes from the seriously uneven playing field between the character, Miles, and the murderous mutated inmate stalking him. Nothing is more distressing than not being able to fight back against attackers, only being able to watch them with a night vision camera and then choosing whether to run or hide. 4. Detention. Indie gem Detention is a 2D puzzle side-scroller set in a high school in the remote mountains of 1960s Taiwan. As the game's somber atmosphere hints, this was a dark time in Taiwanese history due to the rule of martial law by China that lasted for nearly 40 years and caused people to live in constant fear. Player character Rei awakens to find herself alone, trapped inside the school at night. She's powerless against terrifying spirits that roam the halls, and her best chance at survival is to figure out why she's there in the first place. Detention serves as yet another example of the power of guilt on the human mind, and just how far we will go to avoid facing the consequences of our actions. 3. I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream. Coming in as the oldest game on this list, 1995's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a point-and-click adventure based on the post-apocalyptic short story from the 60s. I Have No Mouth is renowned for being one of the best book-to-game adaptations of all time, but that doesn't mean it's pure enjoyment. This might be one of the bleakest and most horrifying games you can play. Set in a post-apocalyptic future, a supercomputer has killed all of humanity and now keeps 5 people alive to torture for eternity. I Have No Mouth is capable of challenging our humanity and shaking us at the core. The story is gut-wrenching and 6 of its possible 7 endings are grim, but if you're looking for the best psychological horror games, none may be more deserving. 2. Silent Hill. The Silent Hill series is a study in psychological horror game excellence with its disorientating environment, disturbing enemy design, and atmosphere of pure desolation. But one installment stands out as especially strong in the distressing department: Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 may be 20 years old, but it still holds up as one of the best psychological horror games of all time because it revolves around a haunting story of personal trauma that is truly timeless. This game has a way of embodying human emotion through physical beings, creating monsters that stalk the main character and fill the otherworld in which he finds himself trapped. Number 1. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. When you think psychological horror games, Amnesia: The Dark Descent may have been the first one that came to mind. That's no coincidence. Amnesia is an absolute classic and has all the hallmarks of compelling psychological horror, with the amnesiac main character being unable to engage in combat or even brave the darkness. Released in 2010, Amnesia may not have been groundbreaking for survival horror gameplay, but it makes a point to not so subtly remind us how delicate the human psyche really is. Amnesia shows players the atrocities that humans are capable of committing against each other and, ultimately, the power of guilt and atonement. And there you have it, there is our list of the best psychological horror games. We pass the question over to you now. Have you played many of the games on this list? Are there any that you feel that we missed out? Sign off in the comments down below. We're keen to hear what you're thinking. If you've enjoyed the video, please remember to hit that like, subscribe to the Cultured Vultures YouTube channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos coming right here to the Cultured Vultures YouTube channel. If you're feeling game, also check out the social medias on screen now, and of course, the Cultured Vultures website, culturedvultures.com, for even more content. And between all of that, hopefully, we'll catch you in the next one. But until then, caw.